What is going on, everyone? I am back from Vegas. Had some channel issues during my vacation there again, but we've got them all fixed now. Had a great time out in Sin City, and I even won a little bit of money on the Bulls. Was probably a dumb bet. Thankfully, I was smart enough to not bet on the Bulls playing against the Thunder in the back-to-back game, but I did bet some money down on them against the Memphis Grizzlies, which was an instant regret after having watched the first half, but somehow, this Bulls team pulled themselves together, went berserk from behind the three-point line, putting up the tied for most threes in a game in franchise history, and tying their franchise history record with 25 threes. I saw an insane stat that 3 of the top 6 games in three-point attempts in Bulls franchise history have happened this season. The Bulls have played 4 games this year. 3 of them already became the Bulls' all-time high games in three-point volume. Now, don't get me wrong, sometimes that can come back to bite you when you're not efficient from behind the arc. Case in point, the game against the Thunder where the Bulls put up a mountain of threes but shot 28% on said threes and got blown out of the game. Obviously, turnovers were a big factor in that loss, similar to what we saw in the season opener against the Pelicans. And yes, this is likely going to be one of those seasons that is a prime example of living and dying by the three. But what I'll say is this: I'm absolutely loving the Bulls' new offense. I know it's a very small sample size. I know sometimes it's been a little ugly when they play a little too fast and sloppy and it's chaotic and they just turn the ball over at a high rate. But the Bulls are playing with purpose. They're playing with energy. The decision making has been leaps and bounds better in terms of the shot selection and shot creation. And above all, they're having fun out there. Something you could not say about this team the last 2 seasons, where they just looked frustrated, low energy, and checked out from the team. I'm not saying this team has suddenly turned things around and they're right now on their way to contending, but this is a new team with a newfound sense of energy that is actually playing modern NBA basketball. And look, I'm not going to say that all this is on DeMar DeRozan, because DeMar was incredible in his time in Chicago. The Bulls won so many games, close games, because of DeMar. The Bulls were better with DeMar on the court, but the Bulls wanted and needed to play faster. They needed to change their shot profile, and moving on from DeMar has been a factor in enabling that to happen. There are other factors, of course, as well. Zach Lavine is now back, fully healthy, looking like the incredibly efficient scorer we saw back in 2021. Lonzo Ball being back to help facilitate and move the ball in transition has been a big reason for that, in addition to his ability to help spread the floor. Vucevic suddenly learning how to shoot the ball has been huge in the Bulls' ability to spread the floor, unlike last season when he was shooting 29%. And then, of course, adding a creator, a floor general, and a high IQ player like Josh Giddey. All of this has completely changed the Bulls' overall offense and how they run the floor compared to last year. So no, it's not just because DeMar is no longer on the team. Also, give Billy Donovan credit, he's been able to adjust and tailor the offense based on personnel of this roster and working as best as he can to their player strengths. But anyway, some things to know, key takeaways after going through these first 4 games that I did want to share with you all. I talked about the new offense and how I'm loving the pace, the shot creation, the decision making, the guys playing for each other, no more isolation, hero ball led offense. But the Bulls, and yes, it's only through 4 games, but the Bulls' defensive rating has actually been better than their offensive rating. Their D rating is currently 13th at the time of this recording, while their offense is 27th. Now, that's likely in large part because of their horrible turnover rate in a couple of those games, as well as their subpar field goal percentage overall, given they've been very hot and cold on offense. But their defense, which, don't get me wrong, has still been subpar and looked terrible in that game against the Thunder, has been better than expected. And I guess what I mean by that is I thought this team was going to be a disaster on D, especially with their starting lineup, which their starting lineup has still been pretty bad on defense. But the bench, that last game against the Grizzlies, Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips, Ayo, Jalen Smith, they saved the Bulls in getting back into the game in the third quarter before it got out of hand, and a lot of it was because of their defensive tenacity. Zach obviously was the hero of the game. He was incredible, especially in the fourth quarter, but that bench unit stepped up big time to get the energy back and put the Bulls back in a position to win it. Another thing that has been such a pleasant surprise, and the Bulls front office has to be licking their chops when it comes to the start of the season, is Zach Lavine and Nikola Vucevic are playing some of their best basketball in years. You're talking about 2 players they were trying to trade this offseason, but nobody wanted them because of their contract, their age, and their defensive woes. But now you're looking at a situation where you could actually get a decent return for both players in the form of a trade. Now, whether the Bulls Do it or not is another story, especially since I can totally see AK convincing himself that this was a plan all along and they can make this work with the group they have and keep doubling down on keeping Vucevic and Zach Lavine. I hope I'm wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if that were to happen. But yeah, I mean, you look at their first 4 games, and while they haven't been perfect, they have been exceptionally better than what we saw from them in the last 2 seasons. Vucevic in his first 4 games is having his most efficient season, again, small sample size, but putting up near 21 points per game on 51% from the field and a ridiculous 52% from 3 on over 5 attempts per game. He's not going to be able to sustain that kind of 3-point shooting over the season, obviously, but it is worth noting that Vucevic is greatly benefiting from this new offense where the ball is moving more, guys are moving off the ball, and he's able to get much better looks. And then Zach Lavine, I mean, I'm not going to say he's putting up MVP type numbers because that might be a stretch, especially when he's been turning the ball over at a very high rate, more than usual, but he's putting up all-star level numbers, especially on his efficiency. Elite level 3-point shooting 45% from 3 on high volume, a ridiculous true shooting percentage of 70% so far this season. It's not going to hold like that throughout the year, but just like what I mentioned with Vooch, Zach is thriving in this new offensive system that the Bulls are instilling with this group. Moving off the ball, getting great looks on the catch and shoot, and a lot of times he's creating with the ball, gives it up, relocates for a better shot, and knocks it down. We saw that in the game against the Grizzlies. Zach also just looks like a new man out there, having fun in a free-flowing offense, and it just seems like he's no longer overthinking it. Did you guys also see Zach and Billy hug at the end of that Grizzlies game? Yeah, this is a new team. And then, of course, a lot of credit has to go to Josh Giddey, who has been able to act as the lead facilitator and floor general, finding guys on the backdoor cuts, driving and kicking out to the open man on the perimeter for a 3, and wouldn't you know it, he's even shooting the 3 ball well, even though it's been on low volume. I know a lot of people are not fans of Giddey and his game. Some of us are still bitter about the trade and the Bulls not getting more from Caruso in that trade deal, but you have to acknowledge that he has been a big part of the Bulls' more free-flowing style of offense, and because he's been able to knock down 3s, for now anyway, it's no longer going to be a thing where teams just ignore him and leave him open on the perimeter, which gives the Bulls more spacing for guys like Zach and Coby to drive to the hoop and finish at the rim. But anyway, look, is this team perfect? No, far from it. And I would venture to say that if the Bulls do in fact trade Zach Lavine or Vucevic, their overall offense is going to suffer given those are their 2 leading scorers. But I love what I'm seeing from this new offensive system thus far. It's actually fun to watch. I get excited to see this team play, which I can't really say was the case last year, and that's a win in and of itself. By the way, we did learn that Lonzo Ball is going to be out for at least the next 10 days with a wrist sprain, which is definitely not ideal considering everything Lonzo has gone through to get himself back to the game and having been impacting the game well so far for the Bulls, especially when him and Giddey were on the floor together against the Grizzlies the other night. But at least it isn't his knee, and hopefully he'll be back in a couple of weeks' time. I'll keep you guys posted on that. But anyway, in the meantime, guys, I am back. Appreciate you being patient with me while I was out in Vegas and not having those post-game videos during that time. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.